Okay, where on the website is the white paper? What link? Okay, so I think it's under the parents link, but we'll put it out tomorrow as to where there's a white paper that goes along with this presentation. So there's a 24-page paper that goes along with the details of tonight's presentation. So we're not going to go through the details of those 24 pages, and if you can't sleep tonight, I would encourage you to read it. But I am going to talk about the idea of moving 6th grade to the middle school, when we're going to plan to do that.
I found it on the website.
Okay.
It is under parents. If you scroll to the bottom, there's elementary student population solutions.
Okay.
And that's where the information is.
Got it? It's under the parents link. Okay, so that's the full report of everything that's kind of in here in a more condensed version, for lack of a better term. But this is the analysis and the report that goes along with that plan. And I'm not going to begin with all the charts of numbers. Let's just cut right to the chase. This is a capacity issue. We're running out of capacity in 3 of our 4 elementary schools. And whenever I presented earlier in the year, that's the focus that I had talked about. And we talked about what were some of our options and what could we do. And it really comes down to moving 6th grade to the building in which there's room for them. And that's what a lot of tonight is going to talk about. So in 1920, when we moved students to the next grade level, and having no idea what we have for kindergarten, but assuming large kindergarten, so what I did for kindergarten for next year is we budgeted 4 at Highcliffe, 5 at Ross, 5 at McIntyre, 4 at Westview. That's what the trend has been for quite some time. Yes, we've had some outliers. I think there's 5 kindergartens at Highcliffe this year. So yes, there are outliers to that number. There are 6 kindergartens at McIntyre. Okay, but we budgeted for 4, 5, 5, 4, which is over the last 7 years the average of what that usually comes out to be. So that's what kindergarten looks like without knowing what kindergarten truly is bringing for us, and then moving every kid up a grade level. And so when we do that, because of our class size policy that has 23 students in K and 1, and 25 students in 2 and 3, and 27 students in grades 4, 5, 6, we actually reduce sections slightly. So out of the gate, we're running 114 sections in the elementary school this year. Early projection, nobody moves into the district. We started 111. Now, again, the slides that I've showed you a number of times show you that that's not going to be the case this summer, and I don't believe it's going to be the case either. So we're planning for those numbers to be larger, but it's really based upon which building grows is where the problem lies. Okay, so right now, when you move to next year, Highcliffe is going to have 27 sections. They have 29 classrooms, so there's 2 available. There's room. Okay, so this is where I said in December, it's not crisis right now. I'm not coming to the board saying, I don't know what we're going to do. We've got to move and do this now. No, that's not it. The last slide's going to tell you I'm recommending this for 2021. Because we can have some contingency plans next year in the event we would get this mass influx of students to Highcliffe, and now I've got to add 3 sections. What do I do? So we have some plans, and our board policy allows us to, after June 1st, move students to a different district. So students, or different building. Good. So if a student moves into the district after June 1st, and let's just use Highcliffe just because I'm looking at Sherry Kovach, and that's why I keep saying Highcliffe. So let's just say at Highcliffe we're out of rooms, and we have a student move into a grade that's closed, they would go to Westview, and we would transport them. And so that's how the contingency plan works. We've got 121 elementary classrooms. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get that big over the summer. Okay, so there's room to maneuver within the numbers without having to do this now. But we are running out of space at Highcliffe and at Ross. And it even says that next year when we move them up. Okay? So that's what that would look like. And so that's where it says our projections are going to show an increase through 2025. And I've talked about what our projections look like, and they're off at this point. But the part that's not off is it says that we are going to continue to grow. And so we have to look for a plan that we can sustain this growth model through 2025. And that's really what this idea is looking for. Okay? We traditionally have about 45 students, and it says it right there. It doesn't account for them, but there's room for them. Okay? So that's what those last bullets are talking about. Okay, so if we're moving 6th grade to the middle school, this is going to reconfigure our buildings into K5, 6, 8, 9 through 12. It creates elementary capacity relief to handle that projected increase that I was just talking about. And it basically gains 4 classrooms in every one of our buildings. That's 4 in addition to the ones that are currently available. So Westview at this point, when you move them up next year, is running 24 of 28. You remove 6th grade, you're running 20 of 28 at Westview. Okay, so Highcliffe is running 27 of 29. You move 4 out, you're at 23 of 29. You've created a significant amount of capacity in each of those buildings that hopefully we can sustain this growth model, as I said, projected through 2025. So this becomes possible because we closed this campus. Last year with the safety initiative, we had world language in this wing right here. There's 12 classrooms in this wing. 100% of those classes are now scheduled within the high school. There's no movement between the two buildings. So we have literally vacated 12 classrooms out of this building. That's how this becomes possible. Okay, so that's the first step in the process. Had we not done that, and I said that the last time we redistricted, is that that wasn't a possibility unless we moved world language. And we weren't intending to do that. Well, times changed. Different parameters in the way education safety looks now changed. So we're closed in this campus, and now we have 12 vacant rooms because of that closure. So what happens here when you're talking about building capacities, and I didn't know this until I dug up the Plan-Con documents, but this is the largest building in the district. It's bigger than the high school across the street. And it runs at 39% efficiency, and we have 3 elementary schools running at 98, and one of them at 99. Okay, so it's not just the 12 rooms that were vacated by the world language move, but there's additional space here in the classroom configuration of this building that allows us to move all of the rooms that we would need for K-6 education, plus the special areas and the other things that we would do for them with special education and gifted education, music, art, STEM, all of those things, there's space for because of the number of classrooms that this building has in it. Okay, so there's the 12 vacated. 6th grade is going to require 16 classrooms, and I'm going to explain that here in a minute, but we need 16 classrooms. That's for the 6th grade educational operations of English, math, science, and social studies. Okay, so I need 16 rooms there, plus special rooms. Okay? And then space for special area classes is also available. So there's room here when we do these configurations. Okay, so this is talking about that school within a school model, and what does that mean? So we run a middle school for 7th and 8th grade. On-team concept, 40-minute periods. It does not work for 6th grade. It does not work moving them here. In a lot of the study, without reading Mr. Ferry's study, that's where those problems lie in. When you put those 6th grade students in the middle school environment, is a lot of where those issues can take place. This is keeping the elementary model intact, which means that it's going to look just like it does at the elementary schools. It's just located in a different building. So their day is primarily going to be the same. I'm going to explain the differences, and all the differences except for recess is positive. Okay, so the first thing that we did, or one of the things that we did this year is we departmentalized. So basically you have teachers working in pairs. If my strength is English and social studies, and my partner's strength is math and science, that's how we're going to do the scheduling. Same thing works in this environment. So we'll take 2 classrooms of students with 2 teachers. One teacher will be the math and science teacher. The other teacher will be the English and social studies teacher, and they will share that group of 50 or so students. So that piece is going to stay, which really is a nice transition from elementary school to middle school as we're kind of getting them through that process. That's going to stay, which means we need to have an even number. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, but that's why the number 16 is so important in this model. Because of this departmentalization of teachers, I need an even number. Okay? So currently, we run English as a double period. It's about 80 minutes at 6th grade. Math is 80 minutes at 6th grade. Science and social studies are 40 minutes in 6th grade. Works perfect. We run a 9-period day in this middle school, 40-minute periods. So you double up math, 2 periods, that's 80. English, 2 periods, that's 80. 1 period for social studies, 1 period for science. Now we've got lunch and 2 spaces for specials. And that's where we'd be able to gain better education, I guess, for the 6th grade students. That's what this is talking about. What does that 6-day cycle look like here? It doesn't. So the 6-day cycle works in the elementary school because of the way that cycle is broken apart. You get every one of those specials 30 days over the 180-day period. You get phys ed twice, so that's 60 in that 180-day period. We're going to kind of blend this into the trimester model that we use at the middle school. And by doing that, they gain more time in their special areas. And it looks like this. So in a trimester, the courses meet every day for 60 days. So it's not once every 6 days. So when I have art, I go to art today and tomorrow and every day for 60 days. It allows me to focus on the project that I'm working on and get immersed into that activity and what we're doing. So the way this is going to work here is you're going to have music, or you're going to have computer science, art, and STEM in your trimester. So that would be one period. And it leaves the other period for band and physical education. And so in 6th grade, we have a general music class that meets 30 times in that cycle. And then we have instrumental music that meets about 60 times because it meets twice in the 6-day cycle. So traditionally, the instrumental, either orchestra or instrument student, and the general music student get 90 periods of music. We're going to run it as an A-B block here, which means on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you'll do general music and either instrument, orchestra, or vocal music. And then Tuesday and Thursday, you'll get phys ed. And when you break that out, it turns into 108 classes of music as opposed to 90, and 72 classes of phys ed as opposed to 60. So each of these special areas increase in the amount of time our 6th grade students have access to this. Okay? And I said the first time we did this is not a free move. Okay, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of additional parts to this. And again, in the document that's under the parents link, gets into much greater detail about each of these and what they look like. But this is what's going to be required from us to add to this to move 6th grade to the middle school. Those in red, we already own them. That's not an add. We have 16 6th grade teachers. I need 16 6th grade teachers. That's not an add. It's the same group. Okay, but what we need is, if we're going to add 350 to 400 students to this building, it's going to require an assistant principal, and that assistant principal is going to require a secretary, and that's here at the bottom. I think we need to add a guidance counselor, so we added a guidance counselor, so that and we had talked about the guidance counselors would rotate, so that if this year I have the 6th graders, I stay with them for 3 years. Okay, so we would have a 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade guidance counselor, but they would be with the same group of kids as those kids grew up through the system. And then when those 8th graders went to the high school, then I would get the new 6th grade group coming in. That's how that transition would work. We're going to need an art, music, computer science teacher because the load here is full for those teachers. You can't add to it. And we're not taking enough from the elementary schools to pull one of those teachers with it. So it's going to require an additional teacher to run those sections at the middle school. Same thing with gifted education, same thing. We're going to be pulling a number of gifted education teachers into this building that this gifted program can't not absorb as it is, and we're not taking enough from the elementary schools to then take a gifted teacher, so that's an add. So those are the examples of the adds. This building does not have an autistic support center, but when we look at that autistic support center when we created it at Ross, those students that we created it for are now exiting Ross and coming to the middle school, and this is something that I think is really needed here anyways, and this gives us a perfect opportunity to create that autistic support center in this building as those students grow up with us. And the same thing then is true for the learning support and emotional support students. We're not pulling enough students to be able to pull that relief from the elementary schools. We need to add it. Okay, so when you break this down, there are significant adds to this project, so this is not free. Okay? One of the things that I looked at was transportation, and I looked at 5 different models. Option 6 is keep it the same. 5 different models on how we can redo a lot of different things, and I'm just telling you right now I'm recommending keeping it the same for a number of reasons, and you can, again, read into that, but the complexity of the grade configuration and the time structures required is going to create a significant additional cost to this project. So it's going to be one thing for us to afford what the staffing model is going to look like. For us to also afford the transportation model is going to be beyond what we could do with a full tax increase. And I'm going to get to those numbers in a minute too. But by keeping the time structures the same, I'll take questions at the end. By keeping time structures the same, it's going to limit the changes that are related to transition district-wide. The only way to make changes is to change everything. And so that would make changes from K through 12 to make any of these models work. Some of them are as little as $120,000 and as much as $760,000 additional to the budget. And again, those details are in that white paper, but I'll kind of explain some of those here in a minute. So I'm recommending that we keep the time structures the same, which keeps the busing structure the same, which does not add additional costs to this project in 2021. So the staffing model, when you put it all together, salary and benefits with the positions that we added is about $835,000. That's a significant chunk of that raise to 1.6 or 1.07 million, and it's not a one-time dollar. It's personnel. So it grows every year. So it's not a $830,000 and we're good to go. It's $830,000 that's going to be added to the general budget and will be continued to be carried throughout, which is why it's hard to look at different timing reconfigurations that require us to add buses, and then to add buses, the price escalates from there as well. So every bus we add is $60,200. And so you can see how that can add up very, very quickly. Again, 24 pages of very detailed information are waiting for you at home on the internet. And so my recommendation is for us to do this in 2021. I think we have contingency plans in place that will allow us to absorb even summer move-ins. And then that also allows us to do the exit of elementary school right for our current 4th and 5th graders, as those 5th graders will also be exiting with the 6th graders, the following year. We can do a track and field event specifically for both groups, not combined, separate for both groups, have their own activity day. We can involve them in things like the safety patrol leaders, involve them in the field trips and the middle school orientations, bring them to the play, like we have a group of students going next week to come and see Mary Poppins. Those things that allows them to get a glimpse of the middle school, do that for both groups next year. And then they each get their own graduation day. So those are the really minor pieces of that, but those events are important. And so we want to make them important for both next year's 6th and 5th graders, as they're both going to be exiting elementary school to the middle school. Okay? This plan, by moving it, allows us time to plan for this, transition with it, and really get it right whenever we get to that point. And there's my questions. Go ahead, ma'am. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
If you're going to keep K-8 on the same buses, the numbers are going to increase, and our buses at capacity.
Well, sure. We add buses every year whenever we redo the transportation model based on the number of students we're transporting. But what I'm saying is that would be in addition to what we would have to do just from natural growth. So I'm not saying we run 32 buses now. It's going to be 32 to the end. When we reconfigure, and you're right, we have much more elementary students, and I think that's shown in every chart that I've shown. So when we go do that transportation model, if it's that, okay, we're running 32 buses this year, but that doesn't work. We've got to run this at 34 buses. We're going to run it at 34 buses. But it's the change of time structure that then redoes a lot of the different routings of the way the buses run, and how we share routes with buses is where the numbers escalate by adding buses on top of what we would add just for normal growth.
Well, we're from Wallingford, and so we hit Wallingford and Berkeley, and that's one bus in itself. And if it's going to continue to grow, you're not going to fit any more people on that bus. I mean, you're simply not. They're crammed as they are now. I mean, so I understand that cost and time is another issue, but the fact that the 7th and 8th graders have to sit 3 to a seat, that's an issue. With instruments, with sports equipment, and even the 5th and 6th graders. They're forced to sit 3 to a seat. So that's an issue. I mean, and obviously in our neighborhood, it doesn't seem that we have little ones in our neighborhood right now that we have a couple in kindergarten coming up, but I don't know about Brookmead and the other things, but I don't know about the other neighborhoods in the area either. So, I mean, just letting you know where we're coming from. So they're crammed as they are right now.
Any other questions? Yeah.
2 questions.
Sure.
First question would be about the gifted program. Would you see that having a similar model to what we do in elementary, or in 7th grade where it's kind of more of a loose, when the kids have time they do projects?
I haven't really sat down with Mrs. Bazilla, but I want to say more like the 6th grade model. That's part of the school within the school idea. So more like the 6th grade model, but more of the transition to 7th grade as well. So we could use it as that springboard from elementary to middle school. But the whole idea is to keep this as much like 6th grade as it looks now, because we're successful in the things that we're doing in all of those programs, including the gifted program. So the intent and the goal is to keep it much like it is now.
And then my other question was regarding lunch, where I know the 7th graders are forced to sit with their routine when they first start. I know my son personally is not really in favor of that. It meant breaking up friends, and I know you're trying to meet new people, but maybe not the most natural way to do that sometimes. Would you see the 6th graders being forced to sit with?
We haven't even talked about that as a detail, but 6th grade will have their own lunch, just 6th grade only. So there's a number of ways they could manage the students in that lunchroom. Sit boy, girl, like we used to. Yes.
With 6th grade, I have 3 at High Quest now, and I don't have any in the middle school yet. But I have a daughter that will be coming up next year, and then one will be affected. She's now a 4th grader, so she would be affected by this. So I don't know if the middle school right now, if the 7th and 8th graders sort of interact with each other a lot. Would the 6th graders also interact with the
Not so much.
So
the way this building is kind of laid out, 6th grade will be in one location, and it'll be operated kind of as itself. So the only time the students leave that area is when they would have to go to lunch, which they're all going to be going together anyways. But then art, music, phys ed, STEM, those are all down the main hallway into the basement by the cafeteria along that back wall. So it's literally down the set of steps that's right there is based upon where they're going to be located. So they're going to be pretty much isolated, but there's not going to be that bell rings now at 2nd period, all the students go to the room you're supposed to go to. It's going to be more of a structured environment like it is at the elementary school. Because if you and I are partners in teaching, our rooms are going to be right beside each other. So my kids are going to go to your room because it's time for their English, and your kids are going to come to my room because it's time for their math. So it's literally going to be in that self-contained area until they go to those special classes, which is twice, and lunch, which is once. And at that point, we escort them now. We haven't really talked about whether we're going to escort them through this building or not, but that is not out of the realm of possibilities. That our 6th grade teachers escort them to the gym, escort them back like they do now at the elementary school. So that's how this model is going to work. So they're not bell rings and it's open like it is now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so this is pretty much a done deal, right? For the
I can't think of any other way for us to create capacity without building a building, and if we do, it's not going to be done for the 2021 school year, and it's much more than $800,000. It's a capacity issue, and that's really what it is. And I even said this from the beginning. I don't necessarily love the model of us doing this. It's something that I've kind of tried to protect us from since I've been superintendent for 8 years. But I'm out of options. And we're out of space at 3 elementaries, and I've got a building running at 40% capacity right here. And so it's almost like it's the direction it's being pushed. Not by anybody, it's not the board said do it, or, but that's what it begins to look like is the right solution for the problem that we have. And it's a great problem. We're growing. People want our product, and that's really nice to have. And we're doing great things with attracting students. But it's attracting students to the point where elementary capacity can't handle it. And we've got a middle school building running at 40%. There's room, there's space, and we can run that program here with some additions that are really good. This is one of my favorite slides because academically it does a lot for kids with art, music, STEM, STEM is not something that they do now. We can dedicate 60 days in a school year for 6th graders to get a STEM education piece. Makerspace, Lego building, pre-engineering type ideas for them that they don't get in the school day that they have now. Double up art and music, that's great. So that's what I see as the greatest benefit to this is that slide. I think there was someone over here. No? Okay.
I have a quick question. I'm forward thinking because I've been through this twice now. What is the capacity level at the high school? I forget what that model said.
It's one classroom less than this one, so it's like 1,640 something or other. But
okay, when I project this out, you take those 4 classes now and you move them up, and if we're running at about 400, this is what's going to happen again. So
the difference is they're not scheduled in one little block that they all have to be in one room at the same time. When you get them over to the high school and it's a 9-period open day, it moves much, much different. And although it says the capacity is 16 something, it's with 20 students in a classroom.
So are we going to jump that bridge when we get there?
We don't need to. It's big enough. Okay. It's handled much, much bigger. And it handled much bigger when it had less rooms. Whenever we rebuilt or had the renovation project, we took spaces that were not academic classroom spaces and turned them into academic classroom spaces. For example, the TV studio was a room off the side of the library. It's now the middle of the rotunda. The middle of the rotunda was a storage area before the construction project. So there's about 5 spaces in there that before renovation were not used for students. Now they are. So it's actually bigger than it was when it held more people.
Okay, I was just forward thinking,
yep.
What do we have next?
I did that too. I dug out those documents as well. Yeah. Yes.
So in 6th grade, well, I worked in the 6th and elementary school at the tri-period. So what would happen to those students in 6th grade and volunteer that would go and get extra help with math or reading or speech? Would they then get pulled during?
Yes. They're going to get pulled during one of the 8 periods available is what's going to happen.
So would they be losing academics? Like in the elementary school, there could be no need
Right.
of academics, so then they would be missing.
Yeah, it's going to be more of a support period.
Can you explain that one out? We don't quite understand what the question was.
Okay, so
Can you explain that to us?
there's a tri-period at the elementary school that all the pull-outs happen in, and no new instruction can happen in that pull-out period. It doesn't exist in this model, so that's going to have to come out of either the special areas, that group, or out of the academic time. So, because we had talked about, do we put a study hall in here? No. It's not the best use of academic time. But there's ways that we can create the support systems so that those supports are still available to students without becoming detrimental to the English, Math, Science, and Social Studies part that is what the support's there for them. Okay? A lot of the instrumental music comes out of that, and so, but that's where there's 2 periods beyond that lunch period that become available.
And gifted as well.
Yes. Yeah. We also have a homeroom enrichment period here at the middle school. That will still exist in this time structure. Okay, so you run a 9-period day, then there's that homeroom period at the end of the day. I think it's 30 minutes, right? So there's 30 minutes every day that's going to be available to us for that enrichment type activity. So that's another place that we can make sure that students are getting that support or getting the gifted education part of this. So every day, 30 minutes at the end of the day is like an activity club homeroom enrichment period across the building. That exists in this model for them as well. Yes?
I have 3 questions. The first one is that, so the PE structure is amazing. I mean, that's gold standard across Pennsylvania for the kids to have it 2 times a week all year. That's incredible. My son's at McIntyre, so I don't know this. So is this what the 7th and 8th graders have too, or is this
Yes.
so the entire middle school has PE twice a week?
This is 7th grade. Then 8th grade, we add some electives that they can then choose from, and sometimes in that choice, they lose phys ed, but those that choose phys ed get it 5 days a week for a semester.
Okay. My other question is recess. So the 6th graders are losing recess because of lack of time or lack of a playground?
Playground. I'm not building a playground here. But I took that 30 minutes and I redistributed it into these types of academic pieces.
And then my last question is about the counselors. So it seems very natural to do a counselor for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but I'm just wondering if there have been any discussions about trying to meet the CDC and American School Counselor Association recommendation of 1 counselor for every 250 kids, because we're not really close to that.
No, we're not.
Okay.
No. And this goes back to the financial statement that we just read. I can do all this for you, let's just keep writing the check. We're going to be out of money real fast. So we've got to look at what's in the best interest of kids and what's in the best interest of kids under what we can afford. So, yeah, we're over what they recommend, but it's a recommendation. And so we're adding positions in areas that are deficient. And so if we're going to transition a group of students here, and we're adding 350 students to a building where 6, 7, and 8 is a vulnerable time period for children, and I've got 2 of them in that grade band, so I'm speaking as a parent as well, more counseling we get to that group, the better success opportunity they have for us. That's why I'm saying let's add a counselor here. It's needed in this transition.
Right.
I don't see it needed otherwise, other than a recommendation from a group that hires counselors.
Well, and the CDC. But, yeah, so I'm saying I would love to see another counselor. Yeah, I think it is needed. But I heard you saying price.
Yes?
Just a follow-up question on the special events for the 6th graders. My daughter will be at the last year at 6th grade. But for the other ones, what do they, I mean, they do this, for the band anyway, I don't know about orchestra special events, but for band they do the 6th grade band tour and all of that. Are they anticipating in doing that for them? Because that apparently is something that's been going on for years.
Yes.
And I've only experienced it once, but you know, the teachers have experienced it many years.
Yeah.
So are they going to do that
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yep.
Even with the different teachers that they'll have for bands and things like
So
that?
Jeff and I have a list of all those activities that the 6th graders do, and we're just going to copy, paste, and replace 6 with 5.
Dr. Mannarino?
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment, I think the band tour could actually still be kept in 6th grade. I don't see why the 5th graders have to do it. It could just take place from the middle, they could leave from the middle school and then go on the band tour, and it could still happen in the 6th grade year.
Will you have a band concert for 4, 5, and 6, or will you incorporate the 6, 7, 8?
Those are all the little things that I really haven't gotten to. This whole thing is, does it fit? Yes. Can we afford it? I don't know. It's $835,000. And those pieces of it. Does this solve the problem? Yes. I haven't gotten into the fine details, which is what, let's do this in 2021. Give us a full year to work out those types of things. But I want the end of 5th grade to look like the end of 6th grade for those students. That's the whole goal in my mind as this transition comes through. That there's not something that they lose out on because they had to go to. And then the next year it's easy because now the 5th graders are the last group of graduating elementary students, and it's, you know, all those activities are then available to them. Okay. Chrissy?
So if you're taking all of 6th grade out of the elementary buildings, what changes do you anticipate for the elementary buildings? Is it going to stay exactly the same if the band teacher that travels between 2 buildings now doesn't have that load? Is something different? Or are the elementary kids going to be experiencing changes as a result of the staff changes and things like that?
Not less, that's for sure, because nothing's leaving that they don't have access to now. So that would create more time for band teachers and, you know, those things that you just mentioned. Again, that's in the finer details, but I don't see it having much of an impact on K-5 in a negative manner whatsoever. Yes?
Will the elementary band and orchestra instructors then be helping out with the 6th grade at the middle school level, or will the middle school instructors absorb that grade?
It's a share, because we're adding a band teacher. We're adding a music teacher in here. So that is going to take the lion's share of the load, wherever it is. There it is, music teacher.
Right, but I'm talking about the band, like the Mr. Lucas and the
Yeah.
extra role.
Yes. That person will do it. That one, the new one. Yeah. Okay, so you're looking for specialized things too, though. So if we hire this person and they're more of a vocal music person, then that's where the expertise of the orchestra and the instrumental music teacher that we currently have here comes to help this situation. So it's going to depend upon what the strength is of this person. We hire a really good orchestra person here. Now, the instrumental music and the vocal music help out with those 2 pieces. So yes.
It won't drop from the elementary.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I get it now. No. It will not draw from the elementary. This add plus the expertise that we currently have is what's going to help us to really get that structure moving. Yes?
I don't know how it is today in middle school, but are there like after-school activities like chess club or things like that? And if there are, would those be things that would be open to sixth graders?
Yes, and a lot of those happen in that homeroom period that I was talking about, but yes, there are after-school activities, and that was whenever I was talking about the negatives with this. The one negative I felt about moving sixth grade up is that athletics at the middle school level under the PIAA and National Federation begin in 7th grade. So no sixth graders are eligible for school sports. And I didn't like the fact that I have a student in this building that has activities in this building that they don't have access to. That was one of the negatives I said 3 years ago. But it opens the 6th grade up to those other activities that we have, like the play. So we could now have 6th graders on that stage in the school play where that's not the case today. Part of this, we could have a 6th grade chorus now that we've added a vocal music activity into this. So there's a lot of those types of activities, plus the whole function of the middle school also has those clubs built into it, and those happen at the end of the day in that period, plus intramurals and those types of things that, yes, we're going to involve the 6th graders in. So that's all, again, positive benefits to them being here. Yes?
So I have a current 6th grader, so, I mean, this is like kind of not relevant to her. I'm more here for the one that's coming up behind her. But the middle school schedule, you said the sharing, like, that they can pick between band and orchestra and choir is the way it currently is in 7th grade as well?
Yes.
Okay, so like that's not something that's going to be changing next year. She's in orchestra and choir.
Mr. Lieberman will work with you to get that schedule to work out, to do as much as they can from both pieces.
Okay, I was going to say, because she had been told that she would be able to do both, and she's really looking forward to doing both, and she was a little upset when I mentioned that that might not be possible.
Yeah, no, it's a small handful of students that we then hand schedule through the office to see if we can make it work, and we've been pretty successful in the past to make it work. And there's a number of factors that are involved in that, but we've been able to make it work in the past. So you'll work with Mr. Lieberman when it comes time to schedule. To make that fit, because that's not a normal 400 student model.
No, I know.
It's very isolated, but that's the benefit of the big school with multiple teachers to be able to do something like that.
Okay. Well, in that case, I appreciate the effort to include kids who have multiple interests like that, because I know it doesn't apply across the board, and it's hard to do manually, but it makes a big difference for them. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Ellen.
I have questions.
Okay.
So I have a 4th grader, so this directly impacts me as well, and I am in favor of moving 6th grade, so I don't take this lightly. But I did have a question about the transportation again really quickly, or just a comment, which is that I know that there are children that are bused from the middle school that then have to wait at Highcliffe and Westview, and those kids have a very long bus ride. I've mentioned this to you before. And I would just like urge us as a board and as a district to see if there's anything we can do to mitigate that situation and limit the amount of time that those kids are on the bus, because it's not fair when, there's a small group of kids that have to ride the bus for an exceptionally long time. So I just wanted to mention that concern.
That's a good point. And we looked at that last time. I know we had some issues with bus, but and we will. I'm sure we'll do that to make sure we don't have somebody sitting on the bus or whatever the time frame is.
I also wanted to apologize. I don't think that white paper you're talking about is actually posted yet. I imagine it will be, but it doesn't look like
White paper will be posted under parent links.
You said everyone can go home and look at it, and I don't think that's true.
Amanda got Hamilton tickets tonight. I couldn't make her stay back. So we'll get that on the website for you as soon as we can. And seriously, if there's anything that you come across and you don't understand or you've got a question, just call my office. I'll talk to you. It's not a big deal. I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this as well. If you weren't concerned about it, you wouldn't be here right now. So you read through that paper. If it doesn't sound right or you got a question about it, just call me. You need to come in and talk to me for us to go over numbers? Come on in. We'll go through it. I'd be happy to go through that stuff with you. Yeah.
Just along the lines of what Allison was saying in the question before about the transportation, and this may be completely out of the line of what we're talking about tonight, but just something that I've wondered too. population that's growing so quickly, and there's 6th grades there, why does the middle school, with the middle school and the high school, there's 6th grades here, so why, I just never understood why the high schoolers are bused home and then the middle schoolers are bused to Highcliffe and Westview. And then because
it's the number of time it takes to make all of the runs happen, and so we sandwich the elementary, Highcliffe, and Westview runs inside the middle school run 10 minutes away from the middle school dismissal. So when they dismiss, and the buses that are taking the Highcliffe and Westview middle school students home stop at Highcliffe and Westview to take the K-6 students home. So it's an effort to consolidate time and buses. And so that's where a lot of that savings came in. So when you take the high school, those students are from the entire district population. So that's the whole footprint of the district. The middle school is the exact same way. So we wouldn't be able to get the middle school students all home to the entire district footprint and back to Highcliffe and Westview in a short period of time to create that dismissal. So if we broke it apart and just let the high school dismiss and go, come back, middle school dismiss, go, come back, then run the elementaries, we're about an hour and 15 minutes later, which then means that our elementary populations are going to get home much later than what they currently do. So the lion's share of our transportation model is based upon the elementary students, not the high school students. So we have buses making 4 runs. So we have a bus that'll do the high school, the middle school that also includes Highcliffe and Westview, or not both. Then they'll also go and do a Ross or a McIntyre run. So we're getting the efficiencies out of one bus by having them do multiple runs. Then if we did it, all the elementary schools on one block, means that they're doing 1 run, then 1 middle school, then 1 high school. So that's 3 runs. Right now we have about 15 of 32 buses that are doing 4 runs. Then you have to add in all the private and parochial school runs that we do, because we're transporting to about 54 schools. So all of those things have to fit into this nice little puzzle to get everybody here and home in a reasonable amount of time. And so what happens in that model, and it's in the paper, if we put all 4 elementary schools back on the same model and spread that apart, it really makes the elementary schools, it's like a 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock day because of the way you need to be able to transport everybody through the entire district. So that's what makes it so difficult. So you have to create a model that they tie together so your buses are doing multiple runs, or at that point we're going to double the bus number to make it work. So that's the puzzle that Jerry gets to solve.
Because we're at the same, in North Hills Estates, our kids have like 3 and sometimes 4 people.
Well, they shouldn't be, they're scheduled at 84 passengers, and it's a percent of 84. So 84 passenger bus. So some of them they're not fully scheduled 3 to a seat. And we do have students in assigned seats so that it's not that way. We know that 100% of our students do not ride the bus. I don't know where they're coming from though. So that's part of the difficulty. So if half your neighborhood drove their students, they all have a seat on a bus. There's probably plenty of space because they're scheduled at a 95% capacity, Jerry. The bus doesn't have more than how many kids on it at 84 passengers? It's like 75 or something like that is the max capacity that we schedule on an 84 passenger bus.
Well, from what I hear, the middle school students in the afternoon sit with their feet up and won't let the little kids sit there. So that's why 4 little kids are sitting in a seat in the afternoon.
Just give me the bus number. We'll pull the bus tape. We have audio and video. And if that is occurring, the student will be disciplined for it because it's unacceptable behavior here.
Okay.
So send me the bus number. Jerry will pull the video. We'll pull the student right in and say, is this you? Are you doing this? This has to stop. You can't do this. Okay? Because they're scheduled. They're not scheduled beyond what the bus capacity can hold. And so that's where, yeah. And yeah, at the first pickup, it's tighter. Okay, when you're leaving the elementary school, it's tight. Every student that's going home in that direction is on it. First stop, a number of students get off. And a number of students get off. So I guess the earlier the stop, the tighter it is. But they're not, I don't want you to think that we're scheduling an 80 passenger bus at 105, which is what it's sounding like. It's not the case. Okay? And yes, Allie's right. That's a long run. I'll be honest with you. Some of those middle school, Westview, middle school, Highcliffe runs are long runs.
Hour long.
And
From the middle school to home.
And the solution is write the check. And so that's where we've got to take a look at how we're handling this. Yes?
Why aren't the same buses, and I don't want to be the dead horse, really, I really don't. Why aren't the same buses going just high school and middle schools, and then just the elementary schools? And
It would take me an hour to explain the entire transportation model.
Fair enough.
It's a moving puzzle of multiple runs, because we'll have buses that'll do a high school run, a private and parochial school run, and an elementary run, because you've got to fit all of those in. It's all based upon time, number of students, direction it's going, miles traveled, all of those variables piece into it. So that's why it's not just that, it's not that easy.
I wanted to add just one more comment on the busing, just a little piece of history. One of the things that this busing model did for us with the time change was to not have both the middle school and the high school releasing at the same time. So both and as was the case when my son was on the hilltop. So as a parent driver myself, and then as the parent of a new driver, I don't know which was worse, honestly, but it was, it was a real safety risk up here when everything was just missing at once. So, people sometimes will ask us, well, would you ever think about doing that again? And all you have to do is just envision what it was like. And I think you'll see that the answer, we're much better off with the split.
Okay.
I actually have a comment through the board, if I can. I'm Chrissy Evans from Westview Elementary. So I know that this probably is not going to happen, that you guys would say, we're not going to take Dr. Mannarino's suggestion, and we're just going to let this ride out. See how next year's numbers are. And I would urge you not to do that, because the PTAs and PTOs and PTSOs, we're the ones that do a lot of these traditions and the launching and the celebrating and the paying for these things, and we desperately need time to plan and do extra fundraising. So if you're going to accept Dr. Mannarino's recommendation, I would urge you to do it in the time frame that he says, because none of us want to let this linger next year and not have any ability to plan for it.
Well, if you can read between the lines, we don't have another option. I mean, unless somebody has a better option.
No, what she's talking about is that, we talked about this with the PTAOSO, so I get all the groups. We met and talked about what some of the options could be. And I've been saying for years, I'll tell you how long we can sustain this model when you tell me how many kindergarten students we have. And so I always do that third day enrollment presentation in September. And so I could literally come to you in September and say, okay, here's kindergarten, now move them up. Okay, do they fit? We could make this work one more year. Do you want to wait one more year? So that's what Chrissy's saying. Chrissy's saying, don't do the let's wait and see model one more year. Let's make a decision that we're going to do this in 2021, and let's move on from it, regardless of what happens to the numbers. And I'm not putting words in your mouth. And just let's plan for this for 2021, make it the event that it's going to be, and do it. And if I get 175 students in kindergarten next year, we deal with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think that's going to be the case, because there's 209 registered already, and registration begins on February 18th.
Okay. On behalf of the board, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for your questions, for engaging us in your concerns and thoughts. And as Dr. Mannarino said, please feel free to call him. And yeah.
Can they call you?
Or he'll tell you he's not here. Just kidding. But thank you. And obviously all the questions were extremely great questions, and especially the busing thing. We know we have a lot of work to do there. Nobody wants our children sit on a bus for 40 minutes to go 2 miles. So that we're going to have to work on, and we have to make sure that does work out. And we will. We'll get it to work. It's just a matter of putting the model together. But thanks again for all of you for showing up this evening and voicing your concerns and thoughts and support so that we can keep this thing moving. And again, unless some miracle happens I don't know that we have another option at this point, so we are kind of leaning, obviously, in that direction, so.
Will we be voting on this next month?
You don't have to take a formal vote. If you want to, you could make a motion now to take my recommendation. You can do it in February, whatever you feel comfortable doing.
I mean, I think we should, I'm not saying that we need to do it right now, but I think we need to do it sooner rather than later, out of respect for the PTA, SOs.
Right.
Do you want us to put this as an agenda item for February? We'd be happy to do that.
We can do that.
I would like that.
I mean, I think that gives people a little extra time for feedback at that point,
Right.
because you
Yeah,
just
we
have
need
to
at least
call
a
with
month,
questions,
so.
and,
Okay.
yeah, I
And
think
we'd like
that's.
to try to have the whole board here.
Right,
at that
exactly.
time.
Okay. Great, thank you once again.
Mr.
One
Nudi has a
recommendation, maybe we delay because we have to look at getting through this budget year. This is going to affect the following budget year,
Right.
so I think, let's look at after this current budget year to go with it.
Well, again, we could at least put it back on for another discussion. I'm putting some common sense to this thing. We don't have another choice unless, I just don't know what another choice is.
I agree with you.
So,
Okay. So this budget year is going to affect what's going to happen in that year also, so let's see what this budget year does.
Okay.